Great, if you would like to introduce yourselves and let us know what films you're from.
Yeah, I'm JLee MacKenzie, director and animator. There are bunnies on fire in the forest.
My name is Erich Rettstadt, writer-director of Tank Fairy.
JLee, this is your first animation, is that right? How did you decide to go into this style and genre?
Yeah, Bunnies on Fire in the Forest was definitely first animation. Went into this style and genre really because when the pandemic hit, I just finished my last traditional narrative production, and we had to finish post virtually, and I realized, I was like, wow, I don't know when we're going to get to make a film again.
Right.
So pivoted to animation really as a direct result of the pandemic, and then it was during that moment in time I was stuck here in California, and the state was on fire, and the world was very strange, and I just wanted to make a lighthearted little comedy that was kind of just a little glimpse of that moment. I had a niece who was in school during that time, and there was like a lot of questions of the school getting shut down and how everything was going to work, and she is actually the voice actor in it.
Oh, she's so good. Yeah. And I mean, was it an easy transition going from like a traditional narrative into animation? Are you excited to explore animation again?
I never imagined myself doing animation. I've been in narrative film for quite a few years now, and on a trajectory into narrative film, and still have an eye on traditional production. But after that, I went on to direct three or four more animated films afterwards. Wow. And I'm now working on a first feature which is animated. So.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And what was it like working with your niece? She's so great, but I was just wondering what that collaboration was like.
Because it was during the when everything was still very locked down, I was just mailing microphones to mail the microphone to my friend C. Craig, who will be here tomorrow, who was one of my collaborators from USC. Mailed a microphone to my niece and just recorded with them through Zoom. It was on this. My niece she had voice acted another project for me that my nieces were in quarantine and wanted to make a little film, so I did something with them, and people responded very strongly to her voice. They were like, wow, she's actually really good, and so I was like, let's just keep trying to make stuff. So now she's actually she's the core actor in the feature that I'm making now.
Oh wow.
So we're continuing to collaborate as well. I just wanted to also say, Aaron Meinhardt right here was the cinematographer on it.
Oh wow.
Helped me plan a green screen stage in my dorm. It was shot with an iPhone.
Wow.
And Maria here is producer on it as well.
Fantastic. Can you talk a little bit more about the style of the animation and the techniques you used to film it?
Yeah, for sure. So Bunnies on Fire in the Forest was a combination of the characters are stop motion animation, but the backgrounds are built, all of the environments are built using Google Tilt Brush and virtual reality. So it's like VR backgrounds with traditional stop motion animation that's shot in front of green screen and then lit for the backgrounds. So then we're able to pull the green screen in camera, which was actually in the iPhone, and replace it with the VR backgrounds so that we could light correctly for it. So it was a very non-traditional process for animation that actually was surprisingly easy to do. Doesn't sound easy, but it was like, wow, this is way easier than it should be.
And how long did it take to film it all?
In the afternoon.
Like a day.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a day.
Wow.
It was a little bit more in terms of builds.
Right.
In virtual reality, but
Yeah.
even that was like everything in VR moves much more quickly because it's well, that was very simple in terms of construction. 3D modeling for animation is challenging, but in virtual reality you can 3D model by hand. You can like paint and build by hand, which seems a little bit more normal for trying to create 3D objects. So it just helped everything be very streamlined.
Well, it's so refreshing to see something about COVID that's funny. So thank you so much for making the film.
Thank you everybody for coming too. This was such a fun short block to be in.
Erich, who's traveled all the way from Taiwan, I believe, to be here today.
That's correct.
That's amazing
Good
in
morning.
itself. Thank you. Can you tell us about the inspiration for Tank Fairy?
Yeah, so Tank Fairy was inspired by and made in collaboration with the queer community in Taiwan. I moved to Taiwan 5 years ago to study Chinese and to live with my partner, who is Taiwanese, and I originally was only going to be there for 9 months, but I fell in love with the queer community and the drag scene there, and so I decided to stay and collaborate on a project, and I also didn't want to leave my husband. So, yeah, you know, I love drag. Marion, who's the leading actress, is one of Taiwan's most famous drag queens.
Wow.
And
did you write the film for her?
Yes. I used to go and see her perform. I still do,
Oh, wow.
you know, at Taipei gay bars and clubs and queer events, and I think she's such an incredible performer
Yes.
that I wanted to kind of work with her, and so kind of built the project around her. Yeah.
It's also such a great ensemble piece too. How was the casting for the other roles like?
Yeah, so Jojo, the kid, is played by a kid named Ryan, and we found Ryan on Instagram, actually, through his dance teacher, who is also the choreographer on the film.
Wow.
So we got connected to Ryan that way. He is first and foremost a dancer. This
Amazing,
is his,
yeah.
this is his first acting role.
Wow.
And so we approached him and his family, and they were all on board. And after casting him, it was funny, I discovered that his life really kind of mirrored the life of Jojo in many ways.
Wow.
He comes from a very conservative family. His mom is very strict at school. He's a bit of an outcast because of the fact simply that he's a 11-year-old boy who likes to dance.
Right.
And so that connection, really deepened his kind of investment in the project.
Wow.
And then Danielle, who played the mom, that was the last role we cast, and I don't know, it's kind of a tricky role because in a way she's like the film's antagonist,
Yes.
but also is kind of the key to unlocking kind of like emotional catharsis and for viewers. And so when I first met with her, she spoke very articulately about all of that, and knew I wanted to work with her.
Wow. And what was the rehearsal process like, since there's so much dance involved?
Yeah, it's a musical,
Yeah.
so lots of rehearsals. Actually, I live in Taipei, and Ryan, who plays Jojo, and our choreographer live in Kaohsiung, which is a city all the way in the south of Taiwan. And so I took a lot of high-speed rail trips from Taipei down to the south to rehearse. Blocking, obviously, for camera is super tricky just to get down exactly the way you want it. So lots of dancing rehearsals, lots of acting, and, I love to rehearse, so.
And what was the biggest challenges with shooting those sequences on set?
I don't know, just getting it the way I want.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and so just coordinating all the elements, you know, for a musical can be tough. And so, especially the scenes at the end, outside of the school, also dealing with extras, children, can be tough, so.
It's such a really joyful story. Is there plans to make it into a bigger project at all?
Yeah, so I'm all about making projects that are like queer joy and, you know, happy queer stories. And so, yes, the short is a proof of concept for a half-hour anthology musical comedy series that I'm developing with my partner. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. Just very briefly about the show. You know, we're kind of planning to build a world of like drag queen and king protagonists in everyday Taiwanese settings. So every episode is a different story. For example, there's like one in the market about a pork vendor. There's one in the tea fields in the mountain. There's one about a stripper who performs at funerals. So this is kind of the tone, and Tank Fairy is one of the episodes.
So what made you think of Tank Fairy, like the tank, and for this particular storyline?
Yeah, so when I moved to Taiwan, I didn't have any idea about this role of the gas tank delivery person. You know, I didn't know that existed. And so naturally, I was just kind of drawn to that and fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And I already knew that I wanted to work with Marianne. I wanted to have a drag queen as the protagonist. And so literally one morning I was woken up by the arrival of a gas tank, and I got to thinking, like, what happens if we like drag up the gas tank delivery worker? In Taiwan, they're, you know,
That's awesome.
it's new. So this role in Taiwan, it's important to say that like there's a class and a gender stereotype to that role, and so I wanted to both like subvert that, but also pay respect to the essential role that they play in Taiwanese society.
How many kids were in that extra scene every day?
Gosh, probably around 20, yeah.
Yeah.
Both of your stories, I think, are my favorite films. I just want to ask, was that your niece's, like, I'm just so curious about, like, was that her story?
It wasn't her story specifically as much as inspired by her and by the serious events happening around her and all of us.
Okay, cool. She does have such an incredible voice.
Yeah.
It's exciting to hear that she's starting a career from it. Yeah.
Has she seen the film? I'm guessing she has.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
She
likes it?
Oh my God. Okay. The little story. When I made this, I didn't. I liked it, but I was like, I don't know if anybody else is gonna like this. It's such a complicated time right now, and I don't know, is this too soon? But it was even earlier than too soon, I think. But I submitted it to a handful of like comedy festivals, and then we ended up submitting it to Tribeca also, just to see, and then I ended up premiering at Tribeca. Whoopi Goldberg presented it there, and my niece came for that, so she got to have her first premiere at Tribeca.
That's so cool.
And she, the part of the story that I like though, is after the premiere, we wake up the next day, everybody got the photographs taken, and she's like featured in Vogue's Best Dressed at Tribeca. Like, oh my God,
So you've created a monster.
Stole the show. It was really fun. It was really fun. I was so glad to see that for her. It was great.
I could just imagine her little eyes right now. Oh yeah.
How old is your niece?
She was 8 for this. She's 9 now.
You gotta bring her to the next screening.
Oh my God, I want to. Yeah.
Just a quick question, Eric. How big was your crew in putting all this together? I mean, how many people did you have? Because I would imagine there's a lot of coordinating and organizing everyone.
Yeah, I think on set we probably had 25.
Oh wow.
I don't know how many people total on the project, but yeah, probably around 25 to 30.
Wow. Oh, yes.
Regarding Tim Ferry, did you have an idea of how you wanted to edit it? Because I thought that like the animation part of the editing was super interesting. Did that come after you filmed, or was that always of your thoughts?
You mean like the visual effects
Visual
aspect? Yeah, this was my first time. I edited the project as well, and this was my first time ever doing any sort of visual effects. So yeah, I mean that was part of the plan from the beginning, and I also kind of wanted to have like a little bit of like a Lady Gaga music video vibe, you know,
yes.
going on,
Yes.
especially in that opening sequence in terms of the edit. But with regards to visual effects, yeah, some of the things were kind of thought of from the very beginning, like when she came out of the tank, obviously the Aladdin moment, but then other things were more just thought of in post.
Oh, yes.
Just a quick comment. I see a lot of telephone in there. Lady Gaga's
Oh.
telephone.
Yeah.
Ah, there you go.
Sure, thanks.
Yes.
Oh, back to your niece. I had a question. When you had her record her lines, how many times did she have to do? I mean, was it just like one takes, or did you keep doing it over and over again?
We did a few. But, yeah, we did a few. She's pretty good. So like sometimes, I mean she's a good reader and is a good, you know, able to internalize stuff. But we're also doing it through Zoom. So I needed to do a few to make sure that she can get it relatively quick. But I needed to do a few to make sure that I was getting good audio, and it's like I don't have an audio person there. We're like in a video, and so I had her do a handful of takes for each one, and to make sure that we had just had what we needed.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And spread the word, because the comedy shots are playing again soon. So